Good morning, everybody. Good morning. What a fantastic turnout. Really appreciate everyone making the time today to be here. Excited to share with you a few updates about what's happening around the city organization, and even more importantly, to answer some of your questions. We already have some good ones in the mix. I'm going to try to not just stand behind this podium here, so I have a lavalier mic. Just doing a quick sound check, make sure everyone can hear me okay on that. Good? All right. Well, welcome. Before we jump into the presentation today, we have a special recognition. We have a member of our executive team that has a huge birthday today. I think some of you know who that is. It happens to be today, so Public Works Director Jay Spurgeon, if you want to come over here and So Jay, we thought long and hard, what can we get you? And knowing you like we know you, I assigned the police chief, Tim Hagel, who knows the very best donut shops anywhere in town.
There are 14 donut shops in the greater Toledo. There's only one donut shop, if you're ever trying to kiss up to Jay, that makes his donut, and it's the one right here, next to the Rhineland Deli. And it's a very specific donut, which is police department approved.
Yeah, that's right.
Chocolate old-fashioned.
Yeah. Well, Jay, to be clear, we did double check, because I was like, I better make sure no one else's birthday is today as well. We do have another landscape worker who's not here with us today, David Chavez. It's his birthday as well. So. So in all seriousness, happy birthday. You're such a great member of our team and our organization. We look forward. I'm sure we'll have other opportunities to celebrate with you today. So as I jump into the presentation, first of all, I just wanted to talk about what's going on with me right now. I'm a little sleep deprived. I've been up since 2:45 this morning, off and on. And it's been a really wonderful and eventful 3 months. This is our little girl, Emerson. We call her Sunny. She will be 3 months on Friday, believe it or not. And it's amazing to me how time flies. So this is where I've been spending a lot of my time and off hours. And these guys have been getting really weird timed emails from me in the middle of the night. But not to be outdone, this guy, my other baby, who will be 7 tomorrow, wanted to make sure that I included him in the mix as well. He's feeling a little underappreciated at the moment. So before I go into talking about some of the things happening around the city organization, I did want to take a moment to just look at the broader landscape in our county and our region and talk about some of the things that are happening, and because I always think it's important to understand context. We have a really amazing organization here, and we're all really fortunate to be here and work for this organization. But I also think it's important because this is not a huge county, and a lot of things that happen within the county have impacts and touch us. The Thomas Fire that impacted Ventura and Ojai and points north was a huge, just a huge issue. How many of you, just quick show of hands, how many of you guys live in Ventura or Ojai or somewhere up around there? I do as well. Live in Ventura, and I've, having worked in municipal government for a very long time, I've been on a lot of fires. And I can just tell you, I've never seen anything like this. And What it really brought into focus for me and what I've seen in the weeks that have come after the emergency, the rebuilding efforts and sort of the community impact around this, is the importance of public service and the importance of local government. And looking at over 500 homes that were lost, and people having to go to the planning department and figure out, where do I go from here and how do I begin to rebuild my life? The importance of the role that we play in helping to bring society back together is so critically important. I know some of you in this room actually have gone up and assisted in inspections and public works activities up there. We have lent assistance along with many other jurisdictions to help out in the aftermath. So, and we will continue to do that. So that certainly colors a lot of what's happening in Ventura County right now. And what this did serve to do is make worse an already difficult housing situation with sub 1% vacancy rates on rental market across the county, and then to lose housing stock like this, it only serves to exacerbate the problem. And a bigger challenge for them as well is that many of you know Mark Watkins retired at the end of the calendar year. We've exchanged text messages. He's floating along in a sailboat in the Caribbean right now for 3 months. He had a really, it was really tough for him, really bittersweet to have this long career and then have it end on that type of a note. But Ventura's without a city manager as they went through a recruitment process, and they haven't identified one yet, so they're continuing to work with a team there that's dealing with significant challenges without a full-time permanent city manager yet. Similar situation in Oxnard. The city manager for Oxnard, another one of our largest cities in the county, has departed for Vallejo, and they have a recall election underway for 4 of their 5 council members. That'll be taking place in May. Our city clerk, Cindy Rodriguez, was up in Oxnard trying to help them with some of the election process, and it's just there's no other way to say it, it's just a mess. They have, this was all over wastewater rates and some issues that came about relating to public's view of increases in wastewater rates. So again, city council stability is an important factor in all of our ability to do our jobs in a smooth and efficient fashion, and Oxnard has some real challenges in that regard. So moving into City Hall, I'm going to give you kind of a update of some of the things happening internally, and then we're going to talk a little bit about some of the council's actions and things that are happening in and around the community. One of the biggest things in City Hall for me right now is, I think many of you know, we still have not permanently filled our assistant city manager position. As I wrote to the employees back in August, we went through a recruitment process and made a difficult decision not to make a placement at that time because the fit for exactly the types of things that we need going forward wasn't there. Gary has stepped up and served in an acting capacity for me, and I'm extremely grateful of his leadership and ability to step up and assist. But we did start a new recruitment process, and that recruitment will close next week. I was down at the League City Managers Conference in Newport Beach last week and had a number of conversations with candidates that are interested, and so that process is continuing. So the timeline that I laid out for you of spring, that's where we're aiming, and I'll be happy to answer more specific questions if anyone has those when we move into the question and answer period. But I can tell you that it's certainly something that's the top of my mind to get filled, having done both of these jobs now for the better part of a year and a half. Certainly ready to have, and I know Gary is ready to have a more permanent placement in there. So addressing homelessness, I'm leading off with this one because I think this is one of those issues that many of you in your different departments are seeing a growing impact with. I'm looking around, and I know some of our public works crews that have been tasked with going out and partnering with police department to clean up homeless encampments and to create clean up landscape areas to create a less enticing environment for people to take up root, and that's happened more and more throughout this community. This is a really complicated problem, and it's not one that the city itself is completely equipped to deal with on our own. We have some tools that we deploy. We have law enforcement tools and public works tools. We have some social services grants, but we're not built we don't have a social services arm of our organization. So as we look to address this real community and societal challenge, we're going to be partnering with our local nonprofit organizations, the County of Ventura. I've joined the County-wide Continuum of Care Board. It's a group of individuals across the county in leadership roles that are looking to effectuate change as it relates to homelessness across the county and bring services and resources to bear in a broader way rather than just have each individual city have to deal with that issue. But I think it's important that we all acknowledge, and we're hearing, we had one of our speakers at City Council meeting last night came, and we're hearing more and more from folks that have had it with seeing folks in parks or seeing panhandlers on the streets. It is a challenge that we are going to confront head on. We're going to take a council agenda item on our next meeting on the 20th to get the council's thoughts and ideas on how they would like to see us move forward. But it could involve any number of things, from having a coalition of our nonprofit groups help address the issue to maybe even considering the potential of a homeless shelter located in Thousand Oaks. So that is one of those areas that we're dealing more and more with. Just a note on employees. I always like to look at, since we started our people strategy discussions some years back, we had made some anticipations about changes and turnover within the organization. And it's interesting for me to look at the data over time and see how well we were anticipating those changes. And I think we've done a pretty good job. In some years, it's even been above what we had anticipated in terms of change. So in calendar year 2017, we had 46 promotions, 58 new hires, and 21 retirements. And if you go back the year prior, and if we look forward to the year ahead, we're going to see some similarity in those numbers. And that's, for an organization of 381 full-time employees, that's a lot of change. It's a lot of, and I'm sure many of you feel that in your departments. So when you dive into those numbers a little deeper, it's interesting to look at how many of those hires are happening from within the organization. So just about 60% of our SMA hires, our Senior Management Association hires, have been from within the organization. A little over half of our TOMA recruitments, and just a little under half of our TOSIA positions. And as you look, when you think about growing up within the organization, oftentimes you see transitions from TOSIA to TOMA and so on, so those numbers sort of make sense. But I think this is a pretty good sign. We want to, all things considered, when we're making hiring decisions, we want to be growing talent from within. I can tell you firsthand, whether it was the assistant city manager recruitment or looking out to other hires that we've made recently, the labor market is really tough right now. It's extremely competitive. And we want to attract the best people we can to our organization, but we want to grow that talent within the organization so that we don't have to go out and take risks on kind of unknown quantities when we don't have to. So I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the things we're doing to work smarter. One of our key people strategy tenets was we wanted to be more efficient and focus on process improvement where we could. And one of the biggest areas that we've done that, and not everyone sees this, and that's why I wanted to take a minute to call it out, is some of the changes we've made to our workflow process. When you're putting together a city council agenda, when you see it in paper, it might seem pretty simple and straightforward, but the process of moving all those staff reports through review in the various departments and collecting all those edits and ensuring that they get put together in the right way, in the right structure, is a real challenge. And we used to do that fairly manually. And our city clerk department did a fantastic job of putting together a workflow process that is allowing us to do that electronically now. And many of you here that are involved in our agenda process are the beneficiaries of that. I know I am. It makes life so much easier to be able to go through and see what everyone else's comments are on an issue and move those forward. We're now working on that at the departmental level. I know there's an initiative underway in Public Works to try to help do the same thing and layer down as you have processes that make sense to move through workflow. So that's a real positive from an efficiency standpoint. Our IT division led a Herculean effort last year to transition us away from Novell GroupWise and over to Microsoft Outlook. Again, something that on the surface, when you come in and open your email client, may seem fairly simple, but this was a huge undertaking. And it was very significant in many ways because it's going to open up doors for us in the future and our technology investments. So it wasn't just about email. It was about our shift to Office 365 suite, our ability to access documents via OneDrive, and our ability to have a new backbone enterprise system that will open up new technological opportunities for community development and for public works and for e-plan review and online permitting and those types of things. So we're very excited about that, very pleased with the leadership in our IT division. ShoreTel is another example of that. We're going to be upgrading our ShoreTel client again soon. Our phone system from the time in which I first got here about 11 years ago to now has really come a long way. And the connectivity between that and our email system will continue to pay dividends moving forward. For those that don't know, we have a referral system. We track all of the citizen issues and requests and council issues and requests that come in. And we had a fairly antiquated referral system that we upgraded in the past year. And for those that have not checked it out online, it's really pretty interesting to see. CRIMS stands for Customer Response Management System. But it is much more graphically oriented and mobile friendly now. You can go on to our website and take a look. This is a heat map showing you where some of the different issues are currently. It's got a great web interface to it, or a mobile interface to it, so you can go on and geotag if you see a sidewalk that's displaced, take a picture of it, and submit it into the system. So that was a very important upgrade that happened from a technology standpoint this last year. Our performance measurement efforts are taking real shape. Purvey's done a great job sort of carrying us forward to this point, and we're going to be taking our first round of performance measures. Our ability to look at data and make better data-driven decisions utilizing tools like this and other things to make better decisions about how we're using city resources. So our performance measures are going to City Council at the next meeting, and very excited to be kicking off that effort. We, largely in response to some of the feedback we got in our employee survey, a couple years back, we created our Employee Recognition Committee, and the committee hosted a number of different activities in the past year that many of you participated in. Just kind of a smattering of some of the photos from our summer fun activities to Halloween activities to our Christmas buffet that we did on this stage. I think this was our first full year of doing it, and I think there's a lot more exciting things to come in that regard. And it's just really nice to spend time together as an organization when we're all working so hard in our individual departments. It's nice to take time away and spend it together. My favorite was I'd come straight back from vacation and landed to find that the hallmark game of the summer activity was pin the bow tie on my picture. We upgraded our intranet site, and hopefully many of you are utilizing that site and starting your day with looking at what's happening around the organization on the intranet page. This was a big investment that coincided with the upgrades to our city website, and Rachel and her team and IT division did a great job of pulling this content together. And this one happens to be highlighting our Employee of the Year process. That was something that our Employee Recognition Committee has put a tremendous amount of time and energy to build. And this will be our first annual citywide Employee of the Year process. It's something that I've wanted to see happen for many years within the organization, and really excited to see it come to fruition this year. We have 18 applicants that have been nominated, so great showing for the first year. One of the other things that our intranet site has, and that I wanted to highlight, is our newly launched training portal, and it's got detailed breakouts of all of our different training activities that HR has put together. It's a great resource to go on and identify opportunities in certain areas and sign up for training activities. So really is a great place to go and spend some time on our intranet site. So just an update about some things happening in and around the community, and I wanted to start with some financial aspects. And those financial aspects are important because they're really, in a community like ours, we're heavily reliant on a number of revenue streams, but most importantly, sales tax. And fluctuations in sales tax impact our budget and impact our ability to do the work in the manner that we've grown accustomed to doing it. So I'm just opening with a quick look at our these are the taxable sales in thousands of dollars, just to show you how things have grown back from the depths of the recession up over time, but at a fairly modest pace. And one of the things that you're seeing here is we're not seeing these big substantial jumps in taxable sales, and that's because our community, especially from a commercial side, is fairly built out. We're not seeing a lot of new entrants into our retail sales marketplace. We'll have a new Lowe's that comes online and some of those things over time, but not any real huge significant changes. One of the areas we are seeing more growth is in TOT, which is transit occupancy tax. It's a hotel tax that's paid. And this is certainly while not nearly as significant as our sales tax in numbers, it is a growing stream of importance, and it's an area that the council's put a lot of attention on, because we have a lot of businesses in town that would like to see us have more hotel opportunities of a higher caliber, so that they're not putting people up in Westlake Village at the Four Seasons or at the Westlake Village Inn. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time on a number of different economic development activities because it's important. We hear the term economic development a lot, but it's really important that we have an understanding of why we spend time and energy and effort focusing on these areas and how they interconnect to other aspects of things happening within the organization. We took an update on economic development a few meetings ago to the City Council, and one of the slides that we had pulled out shows that almost 70% of our residents that are in the labor force are commuting out of the area. And that means a couple things. It means that there's traffic leaving town, people that are leaving town and perhaps having impacts to quality of life, leaving town for other opportunities. But it also means there's a lot of people coming into town to fill those jobs and roles, and that contributes to increased traffic, especially on our freeways and some of our major surface streets. So Measure E and housing has been a big topic, and it is related back to those some of those commuting numbers that I just showed you and talked about. Just a quick show of hands, how many people in this room have any idea what it means when I say Measure E? All right, probably more than I thought, probably a little heavily slanted towards community development, I'm guessing. So there's been a lot of discussion about this topic in the last year, and it is something that a number of you in the room have spent considerable time working on. And this is an outgrowth of last year's goal-setting session with the council. They requested from staff that we come back and give them clarity on exactly how many housing units were still available within our bank of housing. In 1996, voters approved an initiative here that is a growth control measure. We're the only city in the county that has a growth control measure, and it was done at a time and an era in the community in which there was tremendous pressure for increased development. The city was growing significantly, and Measure E put a cap on that. It had an effect of kind of slowing that growth. But you fast forward to where we are today, and the way in which we have calculated the number of units and all the technical aspects of this have come under increased scrutiny, and the number of units that we had in this little bank was dwindling. And what that would eventually trigger, the way the law is written, is that any housing project that wanted to come would have to go to a vote of the people. And so what we spent a considerable amount of time in the last year calculating exactly what the measure meant in 1996 and exactly how many housing units theoretically we have at play remaining. And I talk about this because it was really complicated, but it was also a huge success story of interdepartmental collaboration. The Public Works Department and the Community Development Department and the City Attorney's Office and the City Manager's Office worked really in unison to bring this effort forward. And it was one of the most significant projects that we've done in a long time. This is an issue that's kind of been out in the background noise for our community for many, many years, and we took it head on and while we're kind of midstream in the council's actions on this item, I'm really proud of the way staff has responded and dealt with this public policy challenge in a really professional and positive way. So what the council has done is, through a series of meetings, they've decided that while there were like 5,400 housing units theoretically available, they would take a smaller number, 1,080, and they're going to move forward with a process of considering adding those into the bank. And that doesn't mean that 1,080 housing units are going to be built in the city. It means that there would be capacity that if developers wanted to come forward and offer a project, they could potentially receive an allocation of those units. And that will be over a probably decade process before that would fully play out. But I'm happy to answer any more specific questions anyone has on that as we move in. All of these things are interconnected. Economic development related activities are interconnected around this idea of balance. And that is a really important quotient that I talked to the council quite a bit about, and talked to members of the community a lot. We've, for many years, we've invested tremendously in our environment here with our open space activities, with our sustainability efforts. And that's one of the reasons people love to live here and love to work here, is it's just a beautiful place. But with that, those environmental protections, you also have to consider how do you keep the engine working, and that engine is jobs, and whether those jobs be in the retail or hospitality sector or in Fortune 100 or 500 companies or in mom and pop businesses. Those jobs are what drive our economy locally and are what drive those taxable sales that I talked about up front, which is the lifeblood of our ability to provide service. And then the third piece of that is housing, and that's why this discussion around Measure E and housing is so important, because when you triangulate all of these pieces together, that's what makes up quality of life. And really, the way we're trying to approach economic development is to be in the center of that Venn diagram where we're not too far skewed in any one direction. And that's really what the council's striving to do here. It's difficult. We've all seen cities that have skewed too far in one direction or another, and it impacts the quality of life for residents in those communities. So just to touch on a few of our initiatives that are underway. I think most of you know that the council's #1 priority for the year is locating a permanent home for the LA Rams. It's a really exciting project. It's one that I enjoy spending time on, along with a number of other members of the executive team, trying to bring that together. It's also a huge challenge in an area that is already our land. We don't have a lot of vacant land that's just easy to scrape and build something from scratch. We have to think creatively about how to do that. So we're working on a number of sites around town with the Rams. The good news is they are very happy here. They just re-upped their lease with CLU on a temporary basis to stay there. So as many years go by that their players and staff have homes in our area and have kids in school in our area, we think it makes it all the more difficult to leave our area. So we're working very closely with them. Now that the Super Bowl is behind us, we're going to be meeting again in the next couple of weeks to keep advancing our efforts and hope to have something to report by the end of calendar year. We have a brand new economic development analyst that's going to be starting in a month or so with us. This was a product of our efforts to always refine staffing configurations in various departments, and this is no different in the city manager's office. We took a look at the way in which some of our team was configured when we had some vacancies, and we put council support activities under the office supervisor area, and Ann's doing a fantastic job in that role. And it gave us the opportunity to utilize this position towards one of the council's top priorities, which is on economic development. And I think everyone knows that Hader has a pretty tireless work ethic, but he's only one person, and the amount of things on his plate right now are significant. And so we knew we needed to dedicate some additional resource there, and that's an important priority going forward. So we have that. We have a number of hotel people that are interested in building new hotels. I mentioned that earlier. That was a council priority. It's also a marketplace opportunity that a lot of the development community is seeing. And we are in talks in various locations at places around town for hotels, specifically out in the Rancho Conejo area where we have a lot of business travel need. And that's something that you're going to be hearing more about and seeing more about in the months ahead. We're working to improve our brand on our website from a business recruitment standpoint, and we're working to establish a new ad hoc committee of 2 council members that will focus on economic development activities. All of this is done in concert with our economic development strategic plan that was approved by council last fall. Our downtown, we have the Thousand Oaks Boulevard specific plan is really starting to bear fruit, and the first project is now being graded. I would like to see some foundations being poured and seeing it moving forward, but as with a lot of infill type projects, that there's all kinds of complexities that come up when you're trying to tie into wastewater lines and things that are not just open vacant land. So this is the project that's going to be at the Lupe's site. It is 38 or 39 units? 36 units. Apartment complex, and it's going to have some live workspace, and it's also going to have some cafe restaurant space on the bottom. So this will be the first mixed use project to come up out of the ground. The council also considered 2 other pre-screen efforts for projects in our downtown. This one is across the street from the lakes at the corner of Conejo School Road and Thousand Oaks Boulevard. This one's larger, closer to 100 units. It's been approved for pre-screen, meaning it's allowed to move forward in the process. It has an allocation of housing units and it can move forward. But this one is mixed use as well, commercial restaurant space on the front and housing both apartment starting at efficiency and going up to 2-bedroom and some for sale units actually on the back of the project. And this one is further down the boulevard at 299 Thousand Oaks Boulevard. And this one was pre-screened and it's advancing through the process as well. So these will be coming to the Planning Commission and back to the City Council in the months ahead, assuming they continue to successfully move through the process. So this, for those that have been in the organization for a while, you know and recognize this is a lot of change for our downtown. People have talked about the downtown for a long time. And this is a tremendous amount of activity that we have not seen. And it's a reflection of, one, the Thousand Oaks Boulevard specific plan and the efforts that we put in place there, and the City Council's efforts to really try to push this issue forward. We're in the process of creating a downtown master plan right now, and that'll be coming to council in the next few months, and again, helping to further refine the vision for the future of this downtown. When we talk about housing in our community, we're not talking about residential tracts anymore. Thankfully, that's not a smoke alarm. We're not talking about residential tracts. We're talking about primarily projects that are located within a 3/4 of a mile radius of the 101 freeway. Those are the areas that will be contemplated for redevelopment in the future. So our Thousand Oaks Libraries, our Read to Succeed program graduated its first class. Which was just an excellent program, spearheaded by Heather and a number of the members of the library team, focused on English as a second language learners. We're preparing to be a passport location, and by later this spring we'll be able to provide passport services out of the library. This is really important because the number of places that where you used to be able to go get a passport have dwindled significantly. So we see that as a great opportunity to provide a service for our community. Our Library Foundation, which is one of the fundraising arms of the library, we just had a memorandum of understanding approved with them last night. We're doing some great things with the Library Foundation, and very excited about where that's going to take us in the year ahead. And we continue to fill a number of key positions throughout the library. The Prop 64 and the cannabis laws is an area that I never thought when I got into local government that this would be something I would have to spend so much time on, but we have dedicated a lot of time to it in the last year. The City Council decided to permit, they had a whole menu of choices put before them, and they decided to allow for a single medicinal marijuana dispensary and a single testing facility to locate within the city of Thousand Oaks. And they put a number of parameters in place about what that looks like. But now our process is underway to have people apply for and be considered for those individual licenses. And it's going to be, we had a meeting this week with interested applicants, actually in this chambers on Monday. And we're going to have a lot of competition because it is just a single license for both. And so we've created a very detailed scorecard and process along with our consultant team. We have folks from the finance department, community development department, police department, city attorney's office, all working very, very hard on this. And I'll be interested to see how it plays out in the weeks ahead. There's going to be a lot of, I think, cutthroat competition to try to land this license. But we anticipate being back to the council by early summer with a recommendation. Our Public Works team continues to do great work out in the community. These are some quick stats from calendar year 2017, just to give you a sense of the level of activity that our crews are engaged in. The last one on there, those 125 storm calls, some of those are really focused on single events. Last winter, we had a couple of really crazy days of rain and wind, and it's easy to lose sight of the role that our crews play in helping to get streets open and helping to protect property and helping to beautify the city, and they do just a fantastic job. We're also going to be making some serious investments in the next year. Public Works is going to be really busy on our street maintenance. The City Council made its single largest investment, one-time investment that they've made to streets and roads. We're doing about 50 miles of streets and roads in the coming year, and this should put a real dent in what was our one of our number one deficit areas, which was investments in streets and roads. So that's, I think bids are being opened this week on this project. So we will be coming to council to award those bids and begin moving forward in the process. And this is the map that lies behind this is up on our website. It shows you all the different areas we're touching in and around town and all the different types of treatments we're doing in those areas. Cultural affairs-wise, under Barry's leadership, we had some really huge successes over the past year. Our CAP Presents, which is our Civic Arts Plaza Presents, those are the programs that we put on rather than have a group come in and rent out. Our attendance is up 23%. Number of performances is up 15%. We've had a really wide diversity of performances. Gross ticket sales are up. Just to look at some of the artists that we had come in. We had the Excellence in the Arts Awards came back around, and we've now hit the over 1 million students that we've brought in as part of our educational activities. But the biggest single achievement that took place in cultural affairs last year was the merger of the Alliance for the Arts, which was our private nonprofit fundraising arm, with our Thousand Oaks Civic Arts Plaza Foundation. And those two entities, two nonprofits, came together and brought their collective resources to bear. And under Barry's leadership and support of a brand new board, we have created what we think is the strongest arts-serving entity in Ventura County. And they're off to just a fantastic start already, and we've got really big plans for the years ahead. So this was a huge achievement for us that may have kind of gone under the radar for some, so I wanted to make sure to mention it. That's it for my update. I'm sure there's a number of questions. We've got some on note cards here. I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge everyone that's setting up on stage with me. I have them here because not only do I rely heavily upon them, but they're the subject matter experts on so many issues. And while I'll try to answer all questions, if there's a need to provide more clarity, I'm certainly going to ask the folks on the executive team to do that. I did want to introduce you to one new member of this team that has just joined us. I think some know that our Fire Chief Ted Smith is retiring as of this week, and so we have a brand new fire chief that's just joined our team. And so Chief John Spikerman is at the end of the table down here. So everybody give John a welcome. So with that, if you have a question that's out there, I want you to sort of think about it, kind of raise your hand. I'm going to take a couple of the cards first, and then we'll go out into the audience. You want to just take them all? Yeah. All right, first out of the gate, it's a serious one. Can we get a ping pong table in or near the lunchroom? So, So I'll admit I saw this one a little bit earlier. I love ping pong, and I would challenge anyone here to a game. I think that's something we might be able to make happen. So we'll talk about it and see where we would place it and how we can figure that out. So. Yeah. So, and we will. They just reminded me, we're not just going to treat City Hall. If we're going to do it here, we'd have to figure out MSC in the libraries as well. So, what is the most significant issue the city is facing, and what are our plans to address it? So, it's really hard to have a sort of singular item, but I would tell you that as I kind of structured my presentation around it, I think I think the county as a whole is facing a real dilemma right now, and it's a dilemma that involves a series of different things: jobs, housing, and sort of that balance quotient, and how traffic fits into that. How we begin, not only just the city of Thousand Oaks, but all the cities in the county begin to address that is going to be an important factor in the county's long-term economic success. And anyone that's watched any of the hearings or read any of the articles about this, we've had a gentleman from the CLU Economic Forecast Project. His name's Matthew Feinup, and he's been doing quite a bit of research on the county and economics in the county, and he through his analysis has shown that the county itself had its second straight year of recession, and that recession he attributes largely to impacts around job growth that's tied to a lack of housing. And we see that even with some of our major employers in town. Amgen moved some jobs to Tampa, Florida last year, and there was a number of factors into that decision. But one of the factors that was noted in Amgen's discussion around that was housing and the access to housing for employees. And so that, to me, is one of those challenges, winding our way through that and helping our various city councils in this county to confront and address that in a balanced and thoughtful way is one of the biggest challenges. And I say that because it ties back to everything else. Certainly I could say financial and fiscal impacts, but you address those things and the fiscal aspect comes along. The other big thing that I'll say, and I know there's a question about it, so we'll kind of go ahead and lead into that, is CalPERS and the pension question. And the sort of sustainability long-term of our pension system. And this was the main topic at the League of California City Managers Conference last week. There was representatives from CalPERS there. The League of California Cities just issued a report on pension sustainability. And there, I think some of you know, there's some court cases pending on that issue right now. We're fortunate in that we're not in as dire a position as some cities are, but it's an issue that impacts us significantly as well, and that is going to be something that we need to address head on. Would you add anything to that, Gary or John?
Yeah, you know what I would say is we don't have enough time today to go into great detail about the PERS issues, but Drew mentioned a couple of court cases that are pending with the State Supreme Court. It really has to do with something called the California Rule, which essentially says when you enter a system, you're entitled to that retirement formula for the rest of your career. It's preliminarily, it's estimated that there is going to be a potential change there. So there may be changes in the future for all of us, and it really is in the concept of sustainability. Drew talked about agencies across the state are going to be facing some real challenges. We will as well be facing some challenges. We are better off than most. As this issue continues to evolve, we will do our best to get information out to you either in written form or maybe get a gathering together so people can ask questions. But it's an evolving issue, and it's a complex issue.
Thanks, Gary. Next question is, you all look super professional, even with no ties. Can we make that a city standard? So, fortunately, we don't have a city standard as it is right now. I think for most people that know me, I try to be more business casual when I can be, and it's really based for me on what my meetings look like for the day and who I'm meeting with and what their sort of expectation is. So, to that extent, I think that's what I would share with everyone here. Is it's about professionalism in dress, and it's not necessarily about being always being in a three-piece suit and really buttoned up. But certainly you'll see days in which I'm that way and others on this team are that way. But I certainly enjoy not having a tie on every single day. Can we get more solar at city facilities? So we do have solar at a number of locations. Interestingly, solar is going through some interesting sort of changes on a macro scale. For anyone that's heard about the sort of tariffs that have been put into place on solar from other countries, and especially China. Our solar at the Hill Canyon is actually going through, or how many years have we had that in, Jay? 11 years, so we're kind of coming into our next iteration of that and exploring how we're going to manage that going forward. We've also looked at a few solar projects recently, some bus canopies and other things, and the unfortunate thing is that a lot of them are not penciling. And from a financial standpoint, when you look at the investment that you're making and then the return on that investment. So, Jay, do you have anything to add as it relates to solar at other facilities, or John?
Well, as Drew mentioned, I think everybody knows we have 0.5 megawatt of solar that's been running for over a decade at Hill Canyon Treatment Plant. That's clean, renewable power. We're going to continue that. Who knows, we may expand it out there even. But as Drew mentioned, it has to make financial sense. Just putting solar in for solar's sake, although that's good in many ways, we need to be fiscally responsible as a public agency, of course. So we did just open some bids recently for solar at the Municipal Service Center, and they came in much higher than we expected, and there was a number of reasons for that, but we are not going forward with that project. We may in the future, and I think that in terms of public works facilities, we will certainly keep our options open, so to speak. We may be partnering with a contractor and Edison for something energy related at our Lawrence Drive property that's out by the substation in Newbury Park. So that may bear some fruit in the future. John, you got anything else?
Well, just talking about the return on investment, and that is a very important key part of our evaluation. The other thing, for those that don't know, we also have solar at 401, 403, which is at the Park District, and MPS, which was a unique project. And the only reason why that penciled out was because we had grant funding that really helped support that and make sure that that was financially feasible. The city has a capital facilities committee that's actually made up of 2 council members. And when these solar projects go to them, that's one of the questions that they often ask is the return on investment. What is the payback? And when we move forward, the payback made sense. It was good for public policy, and financially it was reasonable. The ones that haven't gone forward, we even looked at City Hall, if I remember correctly, right, Liz? We looked out at Thousand Oaks Library. We even discussed one at Newbury Park and had preliminary designs. At the end of the day, council, just like the transportation, the stuff out the MSC, did not make financial sense. And it's very difficult to push that with taxpayer money, especially when it's general fund and there's other priorities within the city. So I think that's really my summary.
Great. Next question is, please address the growing homeless problem and if there are any plans to solve it. I knew this was going to come up. It's part of the reason I want to make sure I included it in the presentation. Just to add a little bit on here. One, I don't know that we're going to be able to ever solve it because it's such a multifaceted problem, but I certainly want to make a significant dent in it. And some of the things that we've done in the last year have had some impact, whether it's visible or not. Chief Hagel worked to reassign one of our senior deputies that's been with us for quite some time that's a vulnerable populations officer now, and their job is not just to go in and arrest people that are sleeping in parks or drinking in public, or whatever, but to try to connect them into services and try to make an impact where we can. Certainly to arrest and deploy law enforcement where we're having issues regarding public safety and impacts there. But that's one kind of small area we've made a tweak to. We are going to be looking at some opportunities, and that's why we're coming to City Council. We're going to look at what makes sense from a supportive housing standpoint, from a sheltering standpoint. The long-held issue has been there is not a 365 everyday homeless shelter anywhere in Ventura County. And so the concern's always been, if you're the first city that puts it there, do you become a magnet across the county? And it's a legitimate concern, and it's one that we've been talking a lot about at the city manager's table. We get together every month. And there is a recognition that each city needs to do something to address their individual issue that's tailored towards their city. And so Ventura's working on that, Oxnard's working on that, and we want to be part of that from the East County standpoint along with Simi Valley. So that is part of what we're going to be discussing in the months ahead. When will we see new developments start in the downtown? Mark, do you have a date?
It's happening right now.
Yeah, well, as I said, we have grading underway. We have projects, the 2 projects that I showed you. We have a number of other ones that are kind of in the pipeline. They're just in the conversational stage right now. But the truth is, infill projects are a real challenge. They're not just a challenge for staff to review and to go through all the intricacies of our process, but the sites are challenging for developers. They oftentimes have to work with 3, 4, 5 property owners to amass the right type of property because in an older area like ours, there's a lot of small slivers of property with a lot of individual property owners. And so we're seeing that occur right now, that stage. And so I think you're going to see a lot of change in the next 5 years. And if a couple of these projects end up coming through to fruition, they're going to have a significant impact, and they'll really be catalytic in terms of what other projects may come after that. The last one I have on cards here is I hear about changes to PERS. Will my retirement benefits be affected? And this is kind of one of those crystal ball questions. But when I'm looking into my crystal ball, I often lean on John Adams because John, for those that don't know, was president of the CSMFO last year. He's very involved on a number of league committees. And so I kind of look to John to sort of give a perspective here. We hear a lot about what could change, what might change, and maybe you can tell us what you hear from those groups.
So earlier, Gary had talked about the Supreme Court cases, and really the discussion has been about going forward. I will tell you everything that you have earned to this point, to this day, and at least based on the MOUs and the formulas and stuff, you will retain. With that said, really the Supreme Court decision could impact how local agencies negotiate with employee groups going forward. And that meaning that if currently you're at 2 at 55, which many are classic employees, that's what we term you, The city has about 70% of the current workforce is Classic, and we have about 30% that's PEPRA, which are people that have started with the city since 2013. So going forward, it depends on what the ruling is, but all that means is that public agencies have the ability to negotiate with its bargaining units.
And maybe just one other point to add is, we don't know what's going to happen with respect to a statewide initiative as a result of these rulings. There are large groups of folks that are concerned about the sustainability of PERS and the impact that it's having in communities and their ability to provide core services. So it's possible we could see a statewide initiative that has an impact on virtually everybody in this room. Again, we'll do our best. I don't want people to panic. I don't want people to go home and not sleep. But, as John mentioned, what's in the bank is in the bank. Prospectively, I would expect to see there be statewide changes with respect to benefits.
Yeah, and just talking about what's in the bank, I think you've heard, at least over the last couple of years, agencies that have struggled or have stopped making their PERS payments, and PERS has been forced based on their responsibilities to reduce benefits. And that's when we really talk about this agency and what we're doing to pay and address that long-term liability. We didn't mention it earlier. Knowing what our challenges are going forward, we are actually having discussions with our Finance Audit Committee, which is made up of 2 council members, to talk about strategies to try to reduce those liabilities and make additional payments. As Drew said earlier, we are in better shape than most cities. There's the opportunity for us to pay ahead of some of the liability going forward, which ultimately will save the city money long term. And so, I will tell you, when Gary and I are at the negotiating table with the bargaining units, each of your union reps really understand that, that complexity, and that are really our partners at the table, and really understand that our focus is to try to make our pension system, at least what Thousand Oaks provides, sustainable. And so I think as we have good years like we have the last few years from a tax side, that it is prudent for us to put money away to pay for these long-term liabilities. So hopefully that gives you some assurance, but we can't predict what the state will do, but at least for right now, what you've earned is what you will keep.
Hopefully that provided some context. That's it for the questions that I have on note cards, but I would love to hear questions from any of you out in the audience that have heard things and want more clarity on things. We've got your Park District General Manager here. I would love someone to throw one his way.
Police Chief?
Hey, Gary, right here in the center. I can probably hear you and repeat it.
We're concentrating a lot on the downtown area.
Yep.
Meantime, we have our biggest retail area that's kind of becoming.
Talking about the Oaks Mall?
Yeah, the Oaks Mall.
Yeah.
There's more and more stores going out. Do we have any plans to stop that, or at least assist that from happening, or maybe change the use, or changing everything else to mixed use? Is that possible over there?
So great question. For those who didn't hear, question about Oaks Mall. If anyone's been there recently, a lot of vacancies, a lot of change happening over there. Have we thought about the investments in there? And absolutely, it's something that it's part of our broader economic development strategy. I've actually been spending quite a bit of time over there and with their management team. And this housing discussion touches them as well, because Mace Rich, who's the company that owns the Oaks Mall, and they own malls they run malls all over the country. They only own a few, and this one happens to be one that they own outright. It's a significant capital investment. So they have a long-term. It's in their long-term best interest to ensure the success of that facility. One of the reasons you're seeing a lot of vacancies there now, and it seems counterintuitive, but when they did the renovation, they signed leases out, and the leases they signed back in those times were for retail companies that as everyone knows, the retail landscape is shifting drastically. And so there's a lot of stores that are in there that they are anticipating are coming to end of retail life, meaning they'll be the next ones you hear about transitioning out of brick and mortar stores. And that's happening to a lot of stores in there. There was a big Abercrombie and Fitch store that used to be in there. And they've combined that, I think it was with Hollister and some other things, and they made the Zara store in there. Now the Zara is one of the highest performing stores in the mall. And they did that very targeted. They knew they wanted to get Zara, but they needed a huge footprint. And so they had to wait for this lease to expire and this lease to expire. So a lot of what's happening now is they're letting leases expire so that they have flexibility to move some new retailers into different areas. And so one of their plans is, for instance, where the Disney store is at the far side, they want to anchor a lot of kids activity down there. So all the kids-oriented retailers and stores and candy shop, and they want to move, if they're somewhere else in the mall, they want to move them down there. So that is the kind of kids zone. If you have kids, you go down there, and that's, you got everything right in the same location. Same goes for the outside area. That's been an underperforming part of the mall since they built it. It just never had really gotten traction. A lot of those smaller retailers that are out there, they're waiting for some of those to go out. And the hope is that they're going to be able to bring in an entertainment type use out there, like a Lucky Strike bowling alley, but that requires 2 stories, large square footage footprint, and it's a little bit of a patience game. And it's hard because the public goes out there and they think, there's tumbleweeds coming through here, this thing's going downhill fast. And you know, I see it too when I'm there. You know, the Apple store is the #1 performing store in that location. They doubled the square footage of that Apple store. The Simi Valley Apple store has subsequently closed, and so a lot of those sales are coming this way. So we feel, you know, I feel like while there's challenges there, there's certainly going to be some potential opportunities. You know, the biggest overlying economic challenge is just the way retail has changed, and that, you know, the number of people going into stores in a huge mall like that is shrinking. And so as we talk about housing and as we talk about this Measure E discussion, Macerich certainly has interest in that whole Black Angus area, that old area that used to be on the Armstrong, to consider maybe housing and a mix of uses out there might be something they would consider in the future. It's certainly something that they're talking about, so you have a built-in audience that's ready to support your activities there. Would that answer your question? Other questions?
So,
Hey.
are there any plans, is anybody thinking about doing anything with the Kmart site? Because that's my question.
Yes, there is. I can tell you, and it's very similar to the conversation about the Oaks, the one thing that probably will not work on that site is a big box retailer. They're just, the Home Depot, you know, years ago was turned down there. They thought about coming back 3 or 4 times back and forth. And for those that don't know, they've been carrying the lease on that, a huge number ever since. And they're coming to the end of that term now. I can tell you that they're, now that for years the discussion was no housing, no housing, no housing, no housing on that site. So part of what's changing the dynamics of that site is if there's a willingness to consider housing amongst a whole series of uses on there, maybe some medical, maybe some restaurant, commercial, any number of things, it makes the site very attractive. And so we've probably got half a dozen people that have contacted us with interest in the last year. But it's all predicated around having enough housing units, however modest, so that we could bring it forward to the council to consider. The other thing that's interesting with that site is we have a Ferrari dealership that just came into the old hot tub store there. And how many, do you remember what they were saying from an annual sales standpoint? I mean, I don't remember off the top of my head, but like $25 million a year. I mean, it's a huge, it's a marquee neighbor to have right there at the freeway exit. But then across the street, the Chase Bank is going out of business. So, so all of a sudden you have this kind of vacant corridor into a very, that's a gateway into Westlake Village. And so it's certainly an area that we're I know the council's focused on, Councilmember Adam talks to me about it every single week, and it's certainly something I would like to see move here, but it has to be a really high-quality project. Would you agree with that, Mark? Mark? Caught him sleeping here. You have anything to add to that? Yes. Yeah. And John said he was wrong about the Ferrari. It's 50 million, not 25 million on an annual basis, so, which is crazy.
Just a follow-up timeframe? 5 years, 10 years?
So I will tell you, the council is going to consider their Measure E action in April. And what that does is essentially put units into a bank. Right now, is the number of units that remain, no one's really willing to come in and take the risk on bringing a project forward because they're not sure that there's going to be any units to do that. So that dynamic changes if there's a few more units to be considered in there. So I would tell you that after April, I would anticipate that we'll have interested parties coming through with potential projects. And much like we've done recently with the Nazarbekian project, does everyone know that's the old pumpkin patch, Thousand Oaks Boulevard? They hired a broker, and that broker brought forward interested parties to talk about what could happen on the site and what they might want to do. I would see something very similar happening with that particular site, assuming that housing is something that is a potential consideration for it. So I would tell you probably, summer, fall conversations start, but in terms of coming up out of the ground, it's hard to say.
Just to follow up on Drew's comments, so we should be through the Measure E discussion in terms of Planning Commission recommendation and the City Council, as Drew mentioned, by April. And just to put that number that Drew's mentioned in context, the potential addition of about 1,000 units to this Measure E pool, right now we have roughly citywide, and including a separate pool for the downtown area, about 500 units. So if those units are added into this sort of pool for potential citywide housing construction, then that would support, I think, a more rigorous discussion of the Kmart site, because there will be units available. And although, as Drew's also mentioned, there's a focus on the downtown area, I think it's fair to say that council has certainly not lost sight of some of these key, I would call them sort of outlying areas to some degree, but these sites like Kmart that really have potential. For a long time we thought, oh, we'll have another big box come in, but with e-commerce, that's really not happening. And with the Measure E discussion moving in a positive direction, then perhaps we can consider housing there. And if anybody knows the site, that actually would be a pretty good fit.
We have time for like 2 more questions or so before we do our giveaway.
Yeah, thank you. How about gang activity that we're hearing more about in the community, maybe from the police viewpoint?
I'm going to have Chief Hagel talk about it. It's certainly something that he's working hard to contain and control.
Yeah, so gang activity that we're hearing about, historically for the last 35 years, there are 2 primary gangs in town. And, we're all employees here, so it's kind of good to understand it. One gang is everything, like I say, to the right of Lynn Road or the east of Lynn Road. And the other gang is everything to the west of Lynn Road. That's what separates them. They're geographical gangs, so they're not gangs competitive on criminal enterprise. They are strictly gangs based on you live here and I live there, so I don't like you because you live there and I live here. That is it, plain and simple, of what the gangs' disparities are between the 2 of them. So, that said, where are we at? Based upon approximately 10 years ago, we had just under 400 gang members in the Conejo Valley. And right now, because of massive programs with the city, the Parks District, library, and the schools and the police department, we have that number down from a high of about 400 10 years ago to about 120 right now in totality in the Conejo Valley. To put that in perspective for some of, thank you. To put it in perspective, it's one of the lowest gang per 1,000 citizens anywhere in the area. And that has been done really aggressively with both suppression and with education, stopping that gap of recruitment from kindergarten to 6th grade. I've been an officer here since 1987. We were doing it wrong in the 80s and 90s. We were trying to get to the kids and stop them being gang members when they're 17 years old. So we would try to grab them, get them into programs at 17. It was too late. It was just too late. So we flipped the whole paradigm upside down, and all indications are it's absolutely working. So our goal right now, the stronger gang, is everything to the east of Lynn Road, concentrated on the east end of the city. And we literally have weekly meetings, and our goal is to reduce that gang by 10% every year. And so far we're doing it. So that's where we're at.
Yeah, the question in the front row here.
Yeah, I know that there are, this year's supposed to be the driest on record. Supposedly, are there any plans or any actions that anybody's taking or ideas as far as conservation and stuff like that?
Yeah. So question is about water conservation. And, you know, we had severe drought, then we were out of the drought, and now we're right back into the drought again, all within an extremely short period of time. The good news is a lot of the conservation measures and outreach that we did is still paying dividends. And I look over at Jim in terms of CRPD. Jim, what's the total number of acreage park land wise that you've turf grass that you've removed?
Yeah, so CRPD in the developed park sites, not the open space, we have about 1,000 acres. Of that 1,000 acres, about 500 you would say that's a park. That's like an urban park. Of the 500, about half of that was actually irrigated with grass. So we had about 250 acres. We've taken out 70. So we're down to about 180 acres of irrigated grass. The idea was take out non-essential turf. Although we have found out by doing that process, it's not easy and it's essential to somebody some way, but people get it that something had to happen. So, you know, a lot of the corners of the park, think of a puddle drying up, and kind of the edges are getting the wood chips and the drought-tolerant planting, but we're kind of preserving the middle with turf. But essentially, that's what we're doing. So we've taken out, you know, whatever the percentage is there, 35% of our turf, and we're saving about 30% of our water. So it's our single highest expense after staff is water.
And
Jay's
so,
working on that.
Yeah, yeah. And so you look at that and you think, so that's just CRPD, and it's important to point that out because in most cities that'll be part of the city footprint as well, and a big water user. Our golf course, we did a huge renovation of the golf course, certainly beautified the golf course. We also took out 30 acres of turf grass there, and that pays long-term dividends in terms of water savings. As we look forward, one of the areas that we're investing in and spending time in is groundwater. And our groundwater activities, we've done an analysis for years. It didn't make sense financially. With the cost of water going up, it's making more and more sense to look at groundwater. The reason it's so expensive, not only do you have to pump it up, but you have to treat it in many cases. Most of our groundwater is really salty here in the Conejo Valley, but I think the number that I always remember, Jay, it's like we potentially have enough for like 10% of our need is what our study has shown from a groundwater standpoint, so that's an area that we're investing in. But the truth is, I think this is the truth for all across California, and especially us, we are completely reliant on imported water. So as conditions continue to change, climate conditions continue to change across the state, we're going to have to continue to work really, really hard to educate our residents and to make smart decisions about where we're investing in water projects and the type of landscaping we're putting in. I mean, another example is our medians. You know, our medians, we had, was it 1 million square feet? 20 acres, 1 million square feet of turf, and most of that's come out now, and that is, and we're looking to beautify those with more drought-tolerant landscaping. Does that answer your question in general? Yeah. Anybody else have one final question before I do our giveaway? Nodder.
Jim, can you give us an update on
Nice.
Yeah, that's a fun one. So, and it's really important because the city partnered with the Park District, thank you very much, on the project. Without soft costs, the capital project will be about $7.5 mil. City kicked in 2.5, Park District 2.5, and we got 1.7 from the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy. So it's a partnership with a bunch of agencies. So the project is what was the Lang Ranch Community Park. So Westlake, Arbalest, Herbs Road, that whole area. I don't remember the acreage, but it's a big site. It's going to have a formal 3.2-mile cross-country course that will be like the home of Teal High School, and it'll probably be multi-school meets there, but you'll be able to stand in one location and see your kid run like 80% of the race. It's sweet. There's a group called the Thousand Oaks Soaring Society. There's these big sailplanes that they fly, non-motorized, not human, just for fun, remote control. There's going to be, if you've ever been behind Teal High School, Teal Park, there's a little sort of disc golf course we call Rabbit Flats. It's gotten really popular. It's free. People love to play it. It's multi-generational, and we're going to have a much more challenging, awesome disc golf course out there. And then what I think is really kind of fun and will help us, I hope, with some of the activity we don't want in the open space with mountain bikes, guys building giant jumps and kind of riding a little nuts. We're doing a really cool bike pump track skills park jump site. So they have a few acres that they get to kind of work with, Corba. So kind of a bunch of different non-traditional, not your sports and sports lighting, but just these kind of alternative sports. So thanks to the city and Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy and CRPD, we're going to have this really cool, unique park. And what's crazy is we're literally not having 1 acre of irrigated grass.
Yep.
So.
All right, so got one giveaway. While I am highly disappointed that no one had a legal question for Tracy, hopefully you can pin her down afterwards and ask her one. So our trivia question, this is, I've got some tickets to the theater, and you'll be able to choose between 2 things based on your family circumstances or otherwise. We're talking about fiscal year 16-17, the total attendance in our theaters, and that includes this theater and the large Kavli Theater for that fiscal year. How many people came through the door? Yes. Yep, your hand was up first. 1.5 million. Way high. Because I like your thinking though. Mo? 24,000. 24? Way low. Yeah. Burby? A little high. Who's? Yeah, up top here. 67,000. 67,000 low. 300,000. 300,000 is high. 228,000. Getting closer. 228 was what her guess was. Yeah. 150,000. Close. 170. Up. 165 is just a little low. Who's? 175 right here in the middle. 185? All right, 186 is the answer, so come on down. So while you're walking down here, you're going to get to think whether you want 4 tickets to Peppa Pig live or 2 tickets to see Jay Leno. It's a family activity versus, so March 16th is Jay Leno, April 7th is Peppa Pig. What's that? March 16th. March 16th, Jay Leno, there you go. So you just want to connect with Barry and he'll get the tickets squared away for you, okay? Thank you everybody for taking the time to be here today. It really was a pleasure to spend time with you. If there are questions that you had that you didn't get a chance to ask or you didn't feel comfortable asking, please don't hesitate to drop me an email directly. I'd be happy to respond to any questions that you have or come up and chat with any of us individually. Hope everyone has a wonderful day. Thank you for all that you do.
And